CJ Plain, the music god. Fascinating discussion with Christopher Plain, CJ. I'm going to say he's into music. He has over 1 million songs. When I say have, it's not like Spotify, like on vinyl. First song that kind of, when he was 17, a song that I have never heard of, by the way. We're about the same age. I wonder if you have. Michael Monroe. The album is Not Faking It, Not Jailing Rock and Roll is the song. I didn't know the song. I went and listened to it. It's an 80s kind of, rock song that really turned it for him. We get into some of his heroes. Do you know who Gary Moore is? The guitarist from Thin Lizzy and Skid Row. That's his number one guitarist of all time. I was not familiar with Gary. I asked some friends, they all know Gary Moore, and then I went and listened to Thin Lizzy and some of CJ's reactions to Gary playing. Steve Hackett from Genesis is his other second favorite guitarist. But we get into music, the music business. I talk about, is it fair to artists? I always like to hear artists, take on this. He's also a critic. He's interviewed many artists, and we talk about albums as well. It's a fascinating discussion on where music is now, where it was then. Is it heading in a direction? But just a great conversation with CJ Plain, the music god. Why was he given that nickname? You'll find out. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Oh, CJ Plain, thank you so much for your time, and I'm very, very excited to talk to you. Tell me, explain to me, crystallize to me what music means to you.
Oh man, music is everything. It is literally what has kept me alive, kept me out of prison. One of the, I would sort of tell it this way. One of the defining moments musically for me, 1989, Michael Monroe, who is he's a solo singer now, but he was the original singer of Hanoi Rocks. He released the record Not Faking It. And the very first song on it was a song called Dead Jailer Rock and Roll. And when I heard that song at 17 years old, 18 years old, it was like a lightning bolt because it was literally like, holy crap, that's my entire life. Like I've known since I was 10 years old that my life was either going to be, I was going to be dead in jail or I was going to do rock and roll. So it was like he wrote this song about my life, and it's sort of become my life motto almost. Like I got a whole tattoo that's going to go on my arm here that's all drawn up and everything. And it's going to be like a whole tattoo theme around that whole sort of theme. So, yeah, it's, I've done just about everything you can do in music. I've been a musician. I've promoted music. I've done podcasting and internet radio. I've done college radio. I've toured and gone broke trying to be a rock star. And it's, like I said, it's kept me alive and kept me out of prison. So it's sort of my saving grace in a lot of ways. my guardian angel, I guess, so to
Mm.
speak. So
Now, I mean, I didn't know this Michael Monroe song, "Not Faking It" is the album, I believe, and so
yeah,
I went and listened to it after I heard you mention it, and it's a kind of great rock 80s rock kind of
yeah,
hard driving song.
yeah. He's actually got Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses singing background vocals on it.
Huh.
Um, so it is. It's sort of a hair metal ish. It's the Rolling Stones on steroids. Basically,
Mm,
is sort
mm.
of what Michael is. He's sort of Mick Jagger on steroids. But yeah, like he's one of those musicians. He's gotten better with age.
Yeah.
Like he literally every record he puts out, even as he gets older and older, performing this sort of music that's more, for I guess young people than it is people our age and or at least my age. Um, you think, wow, that's such a phenomenal record. He can't possibly top that. Then he'll come out with the next one and it's even better. And he just keeps doing it. And I'm like, how the hell is this guy just, getting better and better? The older he gets, the better he gets. You're almost like wine. And it's just so amazing to watch him get better and better, and I know you're supposed to as a musician, as the longer you do it, you're supposed to get better. But, I've watched so many singers from,
So you were saying how Monroe there, he's gotten better with age.
yeah, he's one of the few, like, Vince Neil, David Coverdale, uh, the singer of Rat, they've all sort of blown their voices out from doing it. And Michael just gets better and better, man. And more melodic and more everything. And it's just like, he's inspiring, because I'm 53 this year
Hmm.
and I'm recording my first solo record. And, when you hear people say, oh, you're too old to do your first record, you're too old to do this, or you're too old to do that. And I'm like, no, there's, you know, there's a lot of other guys my age that are still doing it. And, I'm not in it to make money. And I know I'm a terrible singer, but um, we're going to use technology to try to hide that as much as possible.
Well, that is one of the benefits, yeah. So, I mean, this is when you heard Michael Monroe, you said when you were 17?
Yeah, like 18. I mean, I'd been a fan even when he was in Hanoi Rocks, um, years before that. If you remember the accident that Vince Neil and Motley Crue had, where he killed the guy in his
Yeah,
car,
yeah.
that was actually the drummer of Hanoi Rocks,
Wow.
and that's what sort of ended the band. Is the guys just sort of decided that, yeah, Razzle was sort of the heart and soul of the band, and they didn't want to continue, so they all kind of formed other bands. Michael went solo, um, so it led to Michael being a solo artist, and he's been really, really great at it, like one of the best. Um, one of my inspirations and one of my favorites for sure of many. Like I love every kind of music. I am a total music fanatic, so um, there's really no genre that I don't listen to, whether it's country, Americana, jazz, blues, a lot of Japanese stuff, metal and hard rock. I listen to reggae and jazz and um, classical. And uh, there's this kid from Kazakhstan named Dimash that I'm obsessed with. He has like a 7.5 octave vocal range. He's a complete alien when it
Hmm,
comes to music. To listen, to watch him and listen to him perform is just, it's almost surreal.
hmm,
Like you watch him and you think nobody should have that much talent. Like
hmm,
it's, and I mean he deserves it. He's worked really hard to get where he is, but 7.5 octaves is just absolute insanity when it comes to singing.
hmm.
The average person has 2.5 to 3 if they're lucky. So, here's this kid who's 25 and he's got the vocal range of like four people, so
Now, before hearing this Michael Monroe song, CJ, I mean, which is
Mhm.
an 80s rock kind of, hard 80s rock song. I mean,
Yeah.
I heard you say it, your father truck drivers, a lot of Bob Seger. You got a Pink Floyd shirt on right there. I mean, these are kind of very different kind of musical elements. What so as growing up as a teenager, what was your influential music?
So my uncle Marty is to this day a record collector.
Yeah.
And I sort of grew up in the era where kids were seen but not heard. Um, so when my dad would go to Uncle Marty's house and they would play cards at night or whatever, I would sort of park myself in front of my Uncle Marty's stereo and just go through his records and listen to his
Wow.
records. So, um, I heard a lot of music from his record collection, and then dad had what he listened to. And then when my dad eventually remarried, she was in the Motown. So I got the Motown influence.
Mm.
And then at 12 years old, I did some boneheaded stuff that, dad said, I don't want to see you for a while. So he sent me to California to live with mom. And that was right as hair metal broke on Sunset Strip. So got sent to my mom's house. She lived 2 blocks off of Sunset Strip. So I was literally crash landed right into the middle of the beginning of when Mental Health from Quiet Riot come out, and
Huh.
um, all of those bands that took off from there, Def Leppard, Quiet Riot, Shark Island, LA Guns, Hollywood Rose, Great White, all of those bands. I was sort of right there in the middle of it. And then eventually dad cooled down and said, yeah, okay, you need to come back home. And that was when punk sort of took over in the late 80s and all that. And I got thrust into the whole punk rock thing. And I've sort of pinballed from one genre to the next over the years and just collected knowledge and whatnot along the way. So I've become this sort of pop culture ish guy who has all this insane knowledge that really isn't good for anything other than doing this.
Hmm.
Like I can tell you Bob Seger's Nine Lives was recorded on April 24th of 1977 at Ypsilanti Studios by Bob Marlette and Rob Boston. And it just on and on, like
Mm.
just stupid trivia like that it isn't good for anything other than being on podcasts or trivia night somewhere at some bar that I don't really go to bars, so I don't really use it for trivia that much. But it's how I got the nickname, the Music God, because my music teacher made a comment in 7th grade, and I said, "No, you're wrong," and I corrected her, and she's like, "You're not right." She goes, "You think you know more than me?" And I went home and got Dad's record, and I brought it to school, and I showed her, and she said, "Well, aren't you just a little music god?"
Wow.
And it just stopped. Like all my friends, when my friends heard that, I was the music god after that. Because
What
I
was
was
the
the kid.
issue, CJ? What was the issue? What album?
Um, I don't even remember. It was something to do with Boston. I remember that. It was something to do with the Boston record. And
More Than a Feeling.
I think it was, I think she made a claim about Tom.
Schultz.
Yeah, she made a claim about, I'm trying to remember exactly how she said it, that Tom wasn't as responsible for the recording of the record as he got credit for.
Huh.
That there were a lot of other people behind the scenes that uh, made the Boston sound what it was. And I was like, no, you're wrong. Tom
Yeah.
was
He was
solely
it.
responsible for it
Yeah.
because he literally recorded it in his
In the
basement,
basement. Yeah.
even
And,
against he literally lied to the record
right.
label who thought he was in LA recording
Right.
it when he was literally recording it in his basement.
In Boston.
Um,
Yeah.
Now, of course, Brad Delp did, do the vocals, and
Mhm.
Barry Jadro did his part.
Hmm.
But far and large, that first record was Tom Schultz being Tom,
Yeah.
just the genius that he was, even creating the Rockman unit, which became, synonymous with rock music after that because it was it's the wireless system that almost everything is based off of now. All the Bluetooth technology and all the wireless everything that singers and guitarists use now all came from the little unit that Tom created. The
Hmm.
guy was an MIT graduate who, I mean, he was a giant nerd essentially that was a brilliant musician as well. So,
I
um,
recently heard the isolation tracks of him singing on More Than a Feeling. I don't know, it's been released. I don't know where I saw it, but it's just him without, without the
okay,
music. Really underrated, beautiful voice. My goodness.
yeah. And there's so many that are like people don't realize that sometimes the guys not playing or not singing are as good or better than some of the singers.
Mm,
Um, a lot of people don't realize Brian May is a phenomenal singer in his own
Queen.
right.
Yeah.
But when you're standing next to Freddie, of course you're going to sound like an amateur no matter how great you are because it's Freddie. Nuno Betancourt is a phenomenal singer.
I'm
Next to
unfamiliar.
Gary from Extreme,
Ah,
more than not more than a feeling, more than words.
More Than Words.
Um,
Yeah.
Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora is an incredible singer in his own right. Um, and one of the reasons that after Richie left Bon Jovi that John chose Phil X to fill in is because Phil's a phenomenal singer as well, and he could do all those parts that Richie used to sing
Hmm.
in those older songs. He had to have somebody that could sing those fills and all of that, and Phil, no pun intended, but Phil could. So, um, but a lot of the '70s guys, Steve Lukather is a
Toto.
phenomenal singer.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that Steve sings because he doesn't do it a lot, but he is a great singer. Um, Jim Steinman, everybody knows Jim Steinman's songs, but
I
unless you've
don't.
actually listened to his solo records, you don't realize that Jim was a better singer than Meatloaf was.
Ah, Meatloaf.
um,
Well, even Phil Collins was the backup singer at Genesis, right?
for many years,
For
yeah,
many
he was
years.
behind Peter and
Peter Gabriel. Yeah.
yeah, he was behind Peter and Steve for those first few records. Steve Hackett is another one. Steve Hackett is near the top of my greatest
Your guitar
guitar.
list. Yeah.
Um, I know he's not a name you hear a lot, but he is a phenomenal guitar player and a super nice guy, a real true gentleman. So uh, Gary Moore will always be my number one
That's
when
your
it comes
number
to
one.
guitar.
Yeah. Gary Moore. Thin Lizzy, Skid Row. That's your number one guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to see him. I was 16 years old. We went to England, saw Monsters of Rock, 1987, I think it was. 1984. It was 1984. And all the other bands that were there, Ozzy was there, AC/DC was there. There were Van Halen, I think, was there. And I have vague memories of seeing them. I remember Gary because
Hmm.
Gary was so loud and so overpowering and just he was he was a show in and of himself. I mean, his technique and his style and the way he played from going just all out assault to the bluesy notes, and then I mean, he had so many styles and techniques that he threw into his music, and I was just absolutely mesmerized watching Gary perform. Like, it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen, and still to this day is the greatest show I've ever witnessed. And I've seen thousands of concerts, and Gary stands miles above everybody. Whether it's Ozzy, Manowar, Van Halen, the Scorpions, I've seen Dio, and uh, I saw Iron Maiden before they were even famous. Actually, saw 38 Special and Iron Maiden open for Rainbow,
Ha.
and it's just a no idea who put that show together
Ha.
because it's just three bands that you would think who the hell thought of putting those three
Yeah.
bands together on a tour? You know, it was 1982. I was 11 years old. It was the very first concert I ever went to. And my Uncle Marty drugged me to it because he didn't have anyone else to go to. So he's like, "Hey, you want to go to a show?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't even know who the bands were, other than 38 Special. I knew who they were, but I had no idea who Iron Maiden was, and they weren't even famous yet. I mean, so it was a great concert.
Yeah, with lots of legends there. I mean,
Yeah,
Blackmore, right? Richie Blackmore, and yeah,
yeah. The Rainbow was the very first. It was the very first tour that Jolene Turner did.
it was
So it
Turner.
was only like the
Ah,
third show that Jolene had done with
wow.
them at the time, and been a huge fan of him ever since too. Like, as another guy that um, there's those select singers that I kind of make the joke they could sing the phone book
Hmm.
and make it sound like $1,000,000. You Jolene Turner and Jeff Scott Soto is one. Dino Jalusic, now he's a new kid, and he's just you know um, if you threw Ronnie James Dio and David Coverdale in a blender,
Hmm.
you'd sort of get Dino, because Dino's he's that perfect center of where David and Ronnie meet. He can do both voices really well.
Hmm.
Um, but he's a young kid. He's only like 23, 24.
I'm
And
drawing a blank, CJ, from Bad Company.
yeah,
Rogers,
Paul Rogers.
Paul Rogers, one of my
Saw them a
favorites.
bunch of times.
Yeah.
Saw Foreigner, Blackfoot, Leonard Skinner, Nugent. I've hung out at Ted Nugent's house a few times. Dad
Hmm.
actually worked for him for a little bit, hauling equipment for him.
Hmm.
And super nice guy. He
Of course.
he gets he gets sort of a bad rap because he does get a little,
Sure.
he does get a little overzealous with some of the things he says, but um, he is actually a super nice guy, and he does, he is a great family guy, and um, really takes care of his family and his people that work for him and whatnot. He's not he's not the guy that I think the media makes him
Hmm.
out to be a lot.
Hmm.
But
I saw him on Joe Rogan, and those are the 3-hour interviews. And, after you walk away thinking, okay, I might not agree with some of the stuff, but he's a good guy. I mean, you don't have to, agree. And
that's
he's
what I said.
great
He does
guitarist.
he does get a little
Yeah,
overzealous
it's
with some of the
okay.
things he says, and
I don't agree with
I know where
everybody.
he's coming from, but
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like, politically, man,
Who
we have
cares?
become a country that I hate that we've become a country that
Yeah, polarizing, very polarized.
we can't agree to disagree,
Yeah.
or we can't go past the politics. I have so many friends that I don't agree with politically, and I'm okay with that because look, we don't agree on politics. Cool, but we love bowling and we love football and we love baseball and
Mm.
we love barbecue, and there's so many things that we agree on. Why am I going to give up that friendship simply because I vote for somebody different than them? I don't care who you vote for. That is your right, your opinion. As long as you're not a complete tool with it and you're forcing it. I mean, that's when it becomes a problem, is when you are forcing it onto people. And, politically, I don't agree with either party. I think both parties are wings of the same bird. And, you know, um, I really think this year, if any year, we should be following the words of Monty Brewster and voting none of the above,
Ah, huh.
Um,
Yeah, we
so
have definite decisions to make here in the States. Since saw the video of you watching Gary Moore, and I did a little bit more, and I started listening to some Thin Lizzy just with the ear towards the guitar, and my goodness. And then I started asking some of my friends, like, "Oh yeah, we all know Gary Moore." So I guess I was just out on this. I didn't know, but yeah, phenomenal, phenomenal guitarist. Is the
yeah.
music industry fair to artists?
Um, that's it. I think it's fair to a point. Obviously, it's like any business where record labels are taking the risk. So obviously, in taking that risk, they're going to ask for a bigger portion. And that doesn't always work out to the artist or work out for the artist. But it's like anything. When you start a business, music is a business. And when you start a business, you have to educate yourself and you have to teach yourself how it works.
Hmm.
And if you don't read the contracts, if you don't have the correct people in place, if you don't follow up on stuff, then you are going to get taken advantage of. You are going to get burned and you are going to go broke because, there are hard lessons that you will learn. I learned them because I was young and stupid and thought, hey, I'm going to be a rock star. And what? They're giving me $100,000? Sweet. Well, I didn't realize that. No, they're loaning me $100,000 and I actually owe them $100,000 now. And I'm not going to see any money until that 100,000 is paid back.
Right.
And I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't read all the fine print. I was just $100,000. Sign me up. And, and then we went and we made a record and sadly it was in a genre that doesn't really sell records that much. So I went financially bankrupt over that deal. At 21 years old, I was in a hole so deep that the only solution was basically to walk away from music and just work for years to pay it back and try to get back on an even footing to where I could go back to the garage and start over and do it that way, But it definitely made me not want to be a rock star per se. Like I have no desire to sign a record contract now. I have no desire to be Eddie Vedder or Michael Monroe. I mean, I'm perfectly happy playing local shows for small crowds and making $40 here or $40 there if that's what I have to do, because there's so much stress and so much drama and so much everything that goes into it that I don't really want to be bothered to do it now. Like, it's a young man's game. Let's put it that way. Or it's the game for people that still had the energy to cover everything. Because you got to, even now, I mean, even if you're independent, you got to put your music on all the streaming sites and you got to register it with ASCAP and BMI. And then you got to watch what little money you make. But, you have to do the distribution yourself and you have to PR yourself and you have to, if you're also running a YouTube channel, then you have that responsibility and you have social media and it's really overwhelming. Like there's 24 hours in a day, how do you record, keep track of your financial money, run your YouTube channel, run your social media, still have a family and time to eat and all of that. And hey, those guys like Tom McDonald that are successful at it, my hat's off to him, man, because I'll tell any musician right now, if you're young and you're coming up, Tom McDonald is the guy that you need to study, because whatever he's doing, again, whether you agree with him politically or not, that guy is selling tens of thousands of physical records, which very few artists are doing. He doesn't put his music on streaming that much, not the records themselves. So if you want his actual records, you have to go to his website and you have to buy the physical copy. And he ships it to you the old fashioned way. And you can get the individual songs here and there off of Apple. But if you want the stuff that he doesn't release as singles, you have to buy the physical copies. And he sold 100,000 plus physical copies right out of his living room.
Really? I'm
Him and Nova.
unfamiliar.
And, you know, he went from being homeless, sleeping on Nova's couch, to owning a $300,000 home in LA and buying his parents' house and, you know, making $15 million a year off his YouTube stuff now. So I tell any new musician, hey, whatever Tom is doing, study it, because he's an anomaly. There are not a lot of musicians that are having the success that he's having, you know,
I'm
musically.
unfamiliar.
And
So Prince has a famous quote where they asked him, how's the record business? And he said, I'm not in the record business. I'm in the music business.
yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. Because Prince, it was the whole point of Prince running out of his contract, because it got to the point where dealing with the business side of it was interfering with the music side of it.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be bothered. So he had the labels telling him, you have to record at this pace, you have to do this, you have to do that. Prince was going to do whatever Prince wanted to do. And if you told him different, he just wasn't going to do it.
That's it.
And which is what happened. He just stopped releasing music. He didn't stop making music.
Yeah, that's right. Big distinction there. He kept making it. He just didn't release it.
He just stopped releasing it.
Because there's thousands of songs in the vault now that I got one today.
Tens of thousands.
Yes.
And I think the last I heard, there were enough songs in the vault to release a 10-song record every year for the next 40 years.
Or something like that. Yeah.
You know, there was like 4,000. There's something like 4,000 songs or something that are somewhere between 50 and 100% complete. And that's insane. Like that's such a phenomenal amount of music. But you know, there's always that type of thing. Shooter Jennings just basically come out and said, there's a room in my dad's house that I was never allowed into as a child. And when he died, we cleaned the room out and everything went into my attic. And we recently went through it and we realized we have about 800 minutes of unreleased Waylon Jennings music that has never been heard. So they are currently going through, him and the living band members are going through and putting this music. So you're going to get in 2025 a brand new Waylon Jennings record.
Wow.
You know, and it's going to be done with loving care because, you know, it's Shooter. And I don't think anybody loved his daddy more than Shooter did, man. Like Shooter has carried that torch, you know, like a champion. So I think even at the detriment of his own career sometimes.
That's amazing family. You mentioned before how technology is going to help you with this new album you're putting together. I mean, as far as technology in the music business, we've gone to streaming. We've seen big celebrities like Snoop Dogg complain about how, the latest I saw was like 0.0006 or something, a stream that the artist gets per stream. But we see the kind of reverse happen. So when I was a kid, you and I are about the same age, CJ, but concerts were $10-15. But then when you were up there, the Eagles, whoever it was, said, go buy our album. They made it money with the album, go buy that. Now it's the reverse, where they're not making anything on the actual music, but the concerts are a lot more expensive. So it's kind of switched. Are you in favor of this?
You know, here's the thing about it. Streaming, definitely, something has to be done about streaming. Streaming is out of control.
Yeah.
When the owner of Spotify, look, I realize you created Spotify, that is your technology. That's all well and fine. And yes, you should more than be compensated for that and receive a share. But
But
when you're making $17 billion a year and the musicians, Snoop said, I had 3.8 billion streams and I made $45,000.
mm,
There's something wrong with that.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, like there should be uh, there should be a middle ground somewhere
mm.
where Mr. Spotify can make his change for his technology, but the musicians also are being compensated fairly. Um, Concerts, you know, the thing about concerts being more expensive is as the technology has evolved, so has the equipment
Yeah.
that is required. And yes, sometimes the equipment is smaller now, but it's more expensive. The lights and the lasers and all of that stuff that used to be simple to operate are all now computerized and all now, you know, com- computer generated. So you've got to have the people that are trained to do that. And you've got to have this equipment, and it doesn't come cheap. So bands like Kiss and the Eagles and, you know, Beyonce and Taylor Swift that are using massive amounts of lights and all of that, it's expensive to put on a show like that. Um, Now, I do think $1,000 for a ticket is completely insane. Um, I am one of the biggest Pink Floyd fans in the world,
Mm.
and I think Roger Waters has completely lost his marbles. $3,500 for a ticket to see him perform a record that he's literally been performing since 1975.
Right.
And it's like, bro, come on. $3,500 to see you perform The Wall?
But he's getting it. People are paying it.
And he is. And again, God bless him. I'm not paying it. Like, I just it doesn't seem right to me. I would much rather support somebody like Youngblood who's up and coming and still has $20, $25, $30 tickets.
Mm.
I would much rather go to the Token or the Music Factory and see some band that is still on the rise. And I just saw The Art of Anarchy a couple weeks or about a month ago. Jeff Scott Soto and Bumblefoot.
Hmm.
And it was $22 for the ticket.
Nice.
I would much rather pay that and see that than to pay a massive amount of money now. Like, it would take something really, really phenomenal to make me pay that kind of money.
Mm.
I honestly, I don't even know if I'd pay that kind of money if Pink Floyd all got back together and did one final tour. I don't even think I would pay money for that at that point, because it's just crazy. I have better things to spend money on. Maybe it's because I'm older and more responsible now.
Frugal.
Yeah.
So what is the role of the critic in music?
I think the critic, the much aligned critic, it's kind of our job to say, should you spend your money on this or should you not spend your money on it, and give you an idea of why. Now, sadly, the art of the critic has sort of become lost to the age of the internet troll. And people have, much like politics, have kind of lost decency and lost the art of what the critic is supposed to be. which is fair to a point. Um, yes, there are horrible records out there, but you don't have to be a complete, excuse my language, you don't have to be a complete asshole
Sure.
about it. You can just say, hey, this is what I didn't like, this is what I did like. And for those records that are that bad, and believe me, I've run across a few, um, just skip those ones. I've got one woman who sends me her record every time she releases one, and God bless her heart for trying, but this woman should not be allowed within 50 feet of a microphone.
Hmm.
Um, she fashions herself a rap artist, but she is nowhere even in the same state as the beat she's trying to rap over. And I don't review her music. Look, you put the time and effort into it, cool. I don't like it. I think you're a horrible artist, but I'm not going to drag you through the mud. That just makes me look like a dick.
So what do you
And
say to her? You say,
I just don't answer the emails anymore.
I see.
Basically, I mean, I told her nicely with the second one that this isn't something I no interest in covering this. And she sent me 5 records since then, and they've sort of just sat in the email box and untouched because, you know,
But CJ,
um,
like the Rolling Stone, when you and I were kids, we couldn't wait to and then
yeah,
Spin, Rolling Stone Spin. I mean, every year the
yeah.
annual Rolling Stone would have the artists with 5 albums they listened to. I mean, and
Circus,
then
Cream,
it,
Metal Edge.
it was great. And Spin, then it started in the '80s. It added more hip hop, which I got into in the '80s. And it still kept a lot of the rock. And politics entered, but I mean, I don't even look at those anymore. Either of those.
It's and again, the internet has made it to where there are so many sites you can go to now
Right.
that whether it's Sleaze Rocks, whether it's Metal Temple, whether it's Rolling Stone, whether it's AP, um, there's I can't think of the punk one, but there's hundreds of sites that still do reviews and still, you know, you can look it up just the same as the old magazines. So
Hmm.
um you just got to do the work. You got to do the research and look for what it is. There's so much great music out there.
Yes.
It's really overwhelming. I get, just on my side of it for the YouTube channel and the podcast and that, I get probably 3 to 4 dozen records a week
Wow.
from bands and artists. And I try to go through them as best as I can. And I kind of have a rule of thumb, like when I start listening to it, if you haven't caught my ear by the third song,
Mm. Oh, when you
next.
say records, you mean albums, you mean
Yeah.
collections. Oh.
Yeah. Like I have A&R and PR companies that send me records weeks ahead of time, um, to review, to do reaction videos for, or to talk about on the podcast, or to potentially interview the artists themselves. And, I kind of pick and choose more nowadays, but you know, I've been really lucky. I've got to interview some of my biggest musical heroes,
Yeah.
and I've got to interview so many amazing bands that are still up and coming and still clawing their way kind of out of the trenches. And I give everybody an equal shot. Like, look, hey, I'm going to treat the local band just the same as I would treat Steve Hackett or John Mellencamp
Mm.
or one of them guys, and I haven't been fortunate enough to interview John Mellencamp. I have interviewed Steve Hackett, which was very surreal to me because he's kind of number 2 on my list behind Gary Moore.
Yeah.
So, but I've interviewed so many bands that as a teenager I'd lay on my bed, posters on my wall, and think, God, I want to be like this guy, or I want to be like this guy. And then the internet comes along, because back in the day, you were lucky if you could write a fan letter and you might get an autograph picture back or
Mm-hmm.
something along that line. And now, using Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you can just contact these people and they generally will reply back and say yes or no, or they have people that will. And it's very easy to set up interviews with bands that you could have never told 16-year-old me that I would interview the band Exodus, because when I started playing metal, that was who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Exodus.
Hmm.
Everybody, I want to be Slayer. I want to be Metallica. I wanted to be Exodus. I wanted to be Zitro. And when that opportunity presented itself, I was like, holy crap, I'm actually talking to the guy that I wanted to be at 17. And I've interviewed Mitch Malloy. I've interviewed the guys from Great White, Night Ranger, Tesla. Um, I've interviewed Michael Monroe, which again was very surreal. That
It's
how
pretty
much,
cool. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, talking to your heroes. Yeah. What has happened to the album though, CJ? I mean, when I was a kid, albums were songs were put in a specific order, complementing each other. The first one meant something. The first song on the second side meant something. It doesn't seem that's still the case now. It's still, if an album is dropped, it's just a kind of a collection of songs. You agree or disagree?
I kind of disagree. There's still, I think, more and more, even the LP itself is coming
Right.
back. Vinyl is coming back.
Good.
Bands are starting to pay a lot more attention to not just the songs themselves, but the artwork that goes into it, like the old days, and adding little
That's another
things
thing.
to it.
Yeah.
And Jack White, for as much as I don't care for his music sometimes, I give him so much credit for what Third Man Records has done within not just his genre, but country and Americana. He did the Loretta Lynn record, and then he's done some punk records. And, Jack has really put himself out there to sort of bring records back, and not just bring them back, but started a company that actually presses them. And,
Mm.
bands can literally go into Third Man Records in Nashville and record a song and have it pressed right there.
Wow.
And, it's really,
It's good to hear.
that's how you keep rock and roll alive, man, is to almost put your money where your mouth is. Like Jack hasn't just talked about it. He's gone out and he's done it. And
I
that's
love
awesome.
I love innovations like that. I remember when
Yeah.
Beck, for
Yeah.
one of his albums, when he actually released the lyrics and the music before he released the album. There was that Elevator album, and told other bands to make it before he releases his own. I mean, that's an incredible idea. And then so you had bands
Yeah.
making some of the songs that are Beck's that he didn't want to release because he didn't want to influence anybody else. And then he released the whole album himself. I just these kinds of ideas, these new ideas that they're just wonderful. I That's the great thing about the music business.
Yeah. One of my favorite um one of my favorite people, his name is Clayton. He's a electronic producer and musician. He has the band Cell Dweller. He also has Scandroid and Circle of Dust. One of the things that Clayton is sort of infamous for is once he releases the record, he will, on his site, he will put all the stems, all the music stems,
Wow.
and then he will challenge people to, like, hey, take these and remix them, recreate them, do whatever you want with them,
Wow.
and then send me the finished product. And then he puts out these remix records with these remixes, and he actually pays these people. Like,
Wow.
if your song, if your remix makes his records, you get paid for it using his music. And I've
That's
saw
so cool.
people take, Clayton is a madman musically. Like, this guy mixes, I mean, if you threw Depeche Mode, Pink Floyd, and Metallica in a room together, that's sort of what Clayton does.
Let's see.
Like he takes this electronic music and he mixes it with metal guitars, and then he adds this sort of almost Pink Floyd vibe vocally to it. And then he brings in all these other people who remix it in all these different ways. So, I mean, that's kind of my goal. Like, I'm taking classes now for music production and media communications. And that's sort of my goal is when I finish this, I want to be able to be one of those guys that ends up on one of Clayton's remix records because, I listen to his music and it's just it's so encompassing. Like it's harkens back to the 70s when you listen to a record and it really was bigger than the song. That music by bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Jethro Tull and where like you hung out in the basement or you hung out in your room and your lights would go off and you just listen to the record and it was an experience. And that's the way Clayton writes music. It's not just about the song, it's a whole experience. And really just a brilliant brilliant dude. Like
You mentioned reaction videos before, CJ, and
yeah,
those are very popular now. And to me, the most entertaining ones are when the youth hear songs from the 60s and the 70s for the first time. When you get these, I'm going to call them kids, anybody under 20 to me is a kid, but that never heard Back in Black or never heard,
yeah,
Rio from Duran Duran or something, and then you see their reaction or some of the Bee Gees songs. That's real,
yeah,
the vocalization with those three brothers, and then just their pure reaction. You could tell it's so genuine. These are wonderful things, and it's so
yeah,
refreshing to see them hear and see this music that's so older than them.
yeah. And I love it when if it is genuine.
Right.
My problem with reaction videos and the reason I got into it is there are those that you can watch and you can tell they're very genuine, that they truly have never heard,
Oh, you think they're
both.
staged? You think some are
They're,
staged?
you can tell the ones that truly have never heard it,
Yeah.
or even I get a kick out of some of the older, like our generation, where the younger reactors will bring their parents in and be
Ah.
like, "Hey, this is first time hearing NF, first time hearing Eminem, first time hearing this or this or this." But then the younger reactors, like you said, that hear the Bee Gees, that hear that type of stuff. But then you get the ones like the one that drives me crazy. His name is Tulip Mafia. And God bless him. He has so many people that love him, but he's the guy that he hears it and he throws the headphones and he kicks the chair over and he jumps around the room. But it's just like, dude, bro, come on.
You think
It
it's
it
staged?
it ain't that good of a fucking song, okay? Like you're acting like a fucking clown. Like come on, bro. Like you're throwing a $300 pair of Beats by Dre and you're kicking your chair across the room over an Eminem song. Like it's Eminem. M's not even that good. Okay, like I am not an Eminem fan.
Oh,
I
I
just
disagree with you.
I and that's and that's one of them things. Like I am the minority. I don't connect to M. Like nothing that I take nothing away from M talent. Like obviously he's extremely talented, but I don't connect to his music. Now KSR1, Chino XL, Vinny Paz, RA the Rugged Man, uh, um, Wu
Rakim?
Tang, Rakim. I relate to those type of artists. M to me just sounds like he's rhyming a Dick and Jane book. So M is one of them people that, yes, incredibly talented as far as what he does, but I just don't connect to it. Like, so it's not my thing. I don't listen to him. I never have listened to him. Um, I dig that he uses cool samples sometimes. Like, I thought it was kind of cool that he used the Steve Miller Band for the new song. Um,
Oh,
and I like that
EPMMD
Steve
did
Miller
that.
come out and said, "Hey, you know, I dig that you did this and
Yeah.
that you're carrying on, and that's cool. Like there is always going to be music that people are going to love and people are going to hate.
Of course.
And the awesome thing is there's enough music to go around where I don't have to listen to Eminem, and you don't have to listen to Youngblood, or you don't have to listen to Jairus Johnson, or you don't have to listen to Hammerfall, or if that's not your thing, awesome. Go listen to what you love, because there's so much of it out there that we shouldn't have to say, this is a shitty artist or this is a shitty artist. If you don't like Taylor Swift, cool. Don't listen to Taylor Swift. Listen to somebody else. I I don't find it necessary to talk trash about Taylor Swift or so many of the artists that I don't care for and connect with, because I'm too busy listening to the stuff that I love.
There's no shortage of music. That's for sure. Art in
Exactly,
general, there's no shortage, and there could be different flavors. And by the way, not everything that the Beatles made was great. You know, so
I
you
am
know,
I am not a Rolling Stones fan.
isn't that
Now I will
interesting?
give the Rolling Stones all the credit in the world. 70 years as a band, that's 70 years as a band,
Pretty
okay?
damn
You
good.
you take nothing away from it. But again, they're a band that I just really, one way or another, have never really connected to them. Um, I'm much more of a I'm much really not even a huge Beatles fan. There's are those Beatles songs that I love passionately. Obladi, um, and Let It Be are two songs that I
Wow,
adore those songs.
isn't that funny?
But to
Those
sit
are
here
probably
and
my two
say,
least favorite Beatles songs. That's amazing. Uh,
"Oh, Chris."
uh, as I get older, I find that I like the Rolling Stones more and more. It's interesting, but I kind of as a kid, my mother had Beatles albums, and so her punishment was to take it away. So I mean, I fell in love with Magical Mystery Tour and the White Album and Sergeant Pepper's and Please Please Me. So it, it's it but it plays a lot on what you grow up with. I mean, that
Yeah,
music in those formative years it really creates the base for what you have. So CJ, uh, I'm in the tech field. I started my business in the 90s. I was working way too hard, CJ. And you mentioned
yeah,
some mistakes that you made in the 20s, and I was working way too hard and wasn't eating well, wasn't I was working late hours. I got myself up to 340 pounds. The doctor
yeah,
said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born.
right.
I know you have a child as well.
I have
Um,
5 of
wow,
them.
congratulations. So the doctor, so I said for the next 7 months, I lost about 130 pounds and I kept it off. And people always ask me,
Awesome.
quick answer. How'd you do it? How'd you do it? Everybody wants a quick answer. My one quick answer to it is discipline. That's how I got it off. That's how I keep it off. I got a routine, I control or order,
Yeah.
willpower, etc. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, CJ. Plain.
You just said it. There's one word. And people have asked me so many times, because I've raised 5 kids and I've done it, as an over the road truck driver until it tried to kill me, and as a musician and all these things that I've done. How do you do it? And the one word, it's routine.
Huh.
Kids need routine. When you see kids that are out here getting into trouble, when you see kids that are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, they're belligerent, blah, 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 and they don't have a dad in the house. They don't, it's routine. Kids have to have a routine, just like adults. The more that you have discipline and routine in your life, the more the better you will do. When you keep a routine, wake up at this time, go to bed at this time, eat at this time. Even Elon Musk is rigid in his routine.
Hmm.
He allows himself a certain number of minutes per day to answer emails, certain number of minutes for each phone
Hmm.
call. It was Elon Musk. You have 3 minutes for a phone call with him, and then it's next. And same with the email. He answers his email only at certain times of the day. He's
Wow.
very rigid in his routine.
Hmm.
And he says that's what has led to my success is I don't differ from my routine. And kids are the same way. If you don't teach your kids the value of money, the value of hard work, the value of achieving something, they will never learn that. And you can't teach them when they're 13 or when they're 16. You got to teach them from the very beginning. Little things like taking out the trash, doing the dishes, helping with the laundry, keeping the room clean. You know, these are all things that any parent should know. But sadly, a lot of parents don't do it, you know. And how do you do it? It's simple rewards. When they do good,
Mm.
they get a good reward. When they do bad, they get a bad reward. They get their game taken away. They get the phone taken away. They get, you know, one of the things I've done is I've limited the technology that might have been around. My kids, they don't get cell phones until they're old enough to pay for it.
Hmm.
I have a 13-year-old. He does not have a cell phone. He doesn't use my cell phone. He doesn't need a cell phone. He has
Wow.
everything he needs. He has his video game system. He has his computer to do his schoolwork. He's homeschooled. I supervise it. But he has no reason to have a cell phone. He doesn't need to be out at Walmart when we're shopping on his cell phone doing this, not paying attention to where he's walking, not paying attention to what I'm saying or what somebody's saying to him. He doesn't need that at 13. We survived just fine as teenagers without cell phones, without having technology 24/7. So to me, it's just routine. You know, I work very hard, if nothing else, to try to keep a steady routine for my kids.
Hmm.
I mean, most of them are grown and have their own families now. Um, one of them pretty much didn't listen to a thing I said and does his own thing now. Um, but the oldest one, I'm proud to say, he is 31 years old and he's up at 7 a.m. every morning. He goes to work. He works as a mechanic. And he, for somebody who was never in the military, he's military like with
Wow.
his routine. You know, like he's,
Order.
yeah. And I think it's crazy because this is the kid who I fought the hardest growing up. Like it was almost physical fist fights with this one. I never thought this one was going to reach a dog. And now he's getting ready to have his first child, and he's one of the most disciplined people I know. And
Hmm.
that's so awesome that he, took him a little while, but it finally clicked in his head, and um, he's doing great. My only daughter, she just got out of the Marines, so she's all about discipline, and she's she's the toughest one of the bunch. She's 5'2" and about 110 pounds,
Damn.
and she's a Marine, man. Like,
Whoa.
yeah, like she's the smallest one by a mile. Like all of my sons, me and all my sons, other than Jackson, who's 12, my sons are all 6 foot and above.
Hmm.
So Caitlin is, significantly shorter and smaller than all of us, and she's the toughest one of the bunch. And I love it. She's spunky and got that fire in the belly, and again, it just comes from discipline. People used to tell me, "Oh, you're too hard on them. You don't let them do what they should be able to do as a teenager." And I was like, "What? Run the streets, not be supervised, not just allowed? Well, you have to be their friend." No, I am not their friend. I am their parent. Like,
Very big distinction there. Very
yeah,
big
like if I
distinction.
would have told my grandfather or my dad, I want to be your friend, I would have got laughed out of the house,
Yeah.
you know? And I hated it growing up. I thought my dad, my grandfather were too hard. But, my grandfather is 97 years old and still runs his farm every single day.
Good for him.
He gets out in that 1952 C farm all. and he's out in them fields and he bales hay, and the toughest man I ever met. I couldn't imagine being 97 years old and still being in the field baling hay.
That generation is something. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like just
Yeah.
tough as John Wayne leather,
Right,
man.
right, right.
And I don't, how old do you think your grandpa will be? I bet that man's got another good 10 years in him,
Isn't that
probably.
something? Yeah.
Like if that man can bale hay at 97, I don't think he's going to
Whew,
die anytime soon. Like I don't know
incredible.
55 or 60-year-olds that go out in the field and bale hay
I certainly don't.
because,
What
yeah, it's tough
what
work.
what motivates you, CJ?
My kids, really, at the end of the day, everything is about being better for them and being able to leave something better for them. Um, Whether it's a better world or just, um, it's not necessarily money per se. I mean, it kind of is. Every parent wants to be able to leave their children in a financial spot that was better than themselves. But um, at the end of the day, my kids kind of saved my life. I
Hmm,
was I was in a horrible place when my oldest was born. And if my oldest wouldn't have been born when he was, I probably would have went to prison. I
wow.
was a horrible, horrible person. Um, Drinking, fighting, partying, just doing things that I look back on now and I don't even know how the hell I survived it. Um, but it was Dakota being born and holding that child in my arms and just realizing that none of that mattered now. It was all about being dad. It was all about protecting this child and doing whatever it took to make sure he was safe and taken care of and had everything he needed in life, physically and the tools to survive. I've never sugarcoated anything with my kids.
Good for you.
I've told them from day one, look, the world is cruel, the world is hard, and when you walk out these doors, nobody's going to give a shit about your opinion. You got two choices. You can either deal with it and push forward and keep pushing forward even when times suck, or you can sit in the corner and you can piss and moan and whine and get absolutely nothing done. And then you'll have nothing in life. And my kids, when they're kids, you don't understand that. But you ask any of my kids now at 31 and 30 and 25 and 24, they'll say, yeah, you didn't lie.
Yeah.
We deal with bullshit every day, but we just keep going.
So kids and music have saved you, CJ. So
Yeah.
given that motivation, how do you measure success?
I have measured at the end of the day for me, if I do nothing else than leave the world with these children, not selling drugs and not robbing people and just being good human beings, that I think is success to me. Um, Money is just money. Money is a means to an end for me. Yeah, you got to have money to pay bills and to make the house payment and the car payment. Um, but I'd be just as happy bartering
Hmm.
if that's how we had to. Hey, I'll trade you this for this. Um, it, I think at the end of the day, what matters the most is just being a good person, treating people with empathy, and in understanding that while we're different, we're also all alike. We're
Hmm.
all in the same boat. We all have problems. We all have to fight through dark times. We all have to deal with the crap that the government throws at us and that life throws at us. And we all have to deal with crappy traffic and
Ah,
shitty prices at the grocery store. And, if you think you're alone in the world when it comes to that, you're wrong. And just take a moment to smile and say hello to someone, because at the end of the day, you don't know how that might affect someone. I went. I tell this story because it is important to me. I went through a divorce about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and it was not a nice divorce. Sadly, not that any of them are. Um, but I went to the grocery store the one day with my son, and I had about $6.25 to my name. I We were broke, and I didn't know how I was going to make it through until the next payday. And my son asked for some ice cream, and he's such an amazing kid. This kid, I never have to raise my voice to him. He does everything I ask without even really having to ask. He helps with everything. He is literally the most perfect child I could ever ask for. And I just, everything that he was going through with the divorce and all of that, I didn't want to tell him no. So I was just like, you know what? Yeah, go ahead, get the ice cream. I'll,
Hmm.
I'll, I'll figure it out. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. God will help us in some kind of way, or He won't, but we'll figure it out. He got that ice cream, and we got to the line, and we were standing in Aldi's, and this woman in front of us, I didn't know this woman from Adam, and she turned around and she looked at me and she said, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, what's up?" She said, "God tells me to pay for your groceries today." She said, "Do you mind if I do that?" And I was just like,
Wow.
she didn't know that I had $6 to my name, and I was spending my last $6 to get him ice cream, you know. And I tried my hardest not to cry, and and then when I walked outside, I just broke down crying because it was
Wow.
little things like that this woman didn't know me from anyone else. It was $6. It probably was insignificant to her. She looked like she was wealthy, and she didn't have to do that. But that little something gave me hope. It gave me, while I was down and felt like the world was kicking me,
Hmm.
gave me that little bit of hope that there are still good people in the world.
Yeah.
There are still those people that care. There are still those people that are willing to give you just that little bit of spark when you need it. And I try to remember that if I'm standing in line, if I
Mm.
get a chance to repay that or to do something in like to that, I don't let those opportunities pass
Mm.
because you never know what it means to that next person. You know, it could mean nothing or it could mean everything. And I don't pass those opportunities up. I live for those moments, kind of like to whether it's helping. I helped Special Olympics because that's as near to my heart as any charity. Um, there's a local shelter here that I volunteer at the shelter because in 1991 when I came home from the army, I found myself homeless due to a friend who I was staying with who didn't pay his rent and got us evicted at 11 o'clock at night. Um, and had they not been there, I'd have been living on the street. But one of the cops said, "Hey, there's a shelter down the street. You should go there." Okay, so I went down there and they took me and they gave me a place to sleep and food. And one of the guys that was a volunteer there said, "Hey, I have this house across the street where I rent the rooms out. Can you afford $50 a week?" Absolutely. So he gave me a room and it was a place to live, and it kind of put me back on my feet from being homeless to having a place to live. And who knows what would have happened if that chain of events hadn't been there.
Wow.
Um, so I don't forget little things like that. Like that's again, that sort of goes back to my discipline and my routine of, you know, I don't let you do something for me and then miss an opportunity to pay that back or to do something in kind for someone else. Um, that's really important to me, and I've passed it on to the kids. Of look, you know, don't turn a blind eye to things like that because
Good for you, CJ.
you
That's
know
really cool.
you
That's
don't know.
strong.
Like again,
Strong story. Really, really cool. So thanks so much for your time today, man. I was excited when we set this up. I love your passion for music. I'm more of a hobbyist myself, but I see you're kind of you love it at such a different level. I love your enthusiasm and fire for it. Anybody's listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Um, just basically type in Music God CJ Plain, or on YouTube, it's either the Noise Report or Music God Reacts. But basically, if you go on Google, if you just type in Music God CJ Plain, it all comes up. Uh, the website and the Instagram, the Facebook, the YouTube, all of that all comes up with all kinds of videos and different things, and all the reviews that I've written over the years, and um, it's all cataloged pretty well.
It
Like
sure
I'm
is.
not a
Yeah.
hard guy to find, and there's a lot more coming. I've sort of I've sort of been lazy over the last few months because I've been moving the studio from the small area that it was to this bigger one and setting up new equipment because now that I'm close to getting this degree for music production, we're going to be a full scale recording studio. So
Good for you.
we're going to be making music in this bad boy here soon
I
and
could feel the energy.
releasing music.
The music
Um,
god CJ Plain Plain. We'll make sure to put it all in the music notes. Thank you so much, CJ. When I'm in the greater Southern California, Los Angeles area, I'll give you a call. Maybe get a cup of tea together.
yeah, I'm actually in Michigan. I'm near
Ah,
Detroit, so
you're still in Detroit. Oh, I thought you were going to
yeah.
school in LA.
Actually, I go to LA Film School. The courses are online.
Ah, look at
Yeah, it's
that.
through Los Angeles Film School. Um, but
Very cool.
uh,
Rock City.
probably going to have to go to LA to finish up my degree because I think one of the classes has to be done in person. But that's okay, you know. I got nothing against LA.
Sure,
You know,
Detroit Rock City, love it there too. Home of they
yeah.
created their own genre of music. Motown was created in Detroit. I mean, it's astounding. CJ, thank you so much for your time, man. You have a great day. You be well.
You too, brother. You be
Bye.
safe.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.